day 2. How is everybody going? Just waiting to set up. So today I want to talk about reprogramming your identity. So how did everybody go yesterday? How did you go with really writing down the goals that you want and giving the instructions to your virtual assistant, your servo mechanism, your internal Google search engine about all the things that you want, the information, so you hand it to them so they can actually find for you the missing pieces of the puzzle. So today, I want to hit home. Yesterday, I said that the servo mechanism works, right? You have this internal goal-seeking mechanism. It's what Dr. Maltz talks about, the cybernetics. Within each and every one of us, there's cybernetics working. And it's like looking at your pulse, right? You don't have to consciously monitor your pulse. If you go for a run, you come back, your pulse will settle down and regulate itself. Your body temperature will regulate itself. That's evidence of that cybernetic instrument that he's talking about. It's like the thermostat that we all have inside our body. So how does the thermostat work? So thermostat is like, for instance, if the temperature has been set at 18 degrees and somebody opens the door and lets a cold air in, then the thermostat would kick up the engine and heat up the room and bring it back up to 18 degrees. And that happens in our life as well. So I want to give you an example of why you're saying, okay, so we have this servo mechanism inside our body that always goes and reaches and hits a target again and again. No matter what happens, if there's fluctuations or deviations, it always brings us back to the target. But what happens then if you're not hitting the target? If it's working, then why aren't I hitting the target? So I want to give an example. So let's say that you are, let's say a person wants to lose weight. They're 100 kilograms at the moment, which is like 200 pounds. And they want to go and lose weight to 65 kilos. And so they go on the diet. And for the first few days, maybe a week or two, they lose a few kilos. And they go, okay, great, this is working. And then something happens. They reach for a cake. They stop going to the gym, something happens in their life, and they get off the diet, and all sorts of things happen, and what happens is their weight goes up again. So they lose the 5 kilos, they gain 10 kilos, or like they just, basically it's kind of like fluctuating, and at the end of the day, you might be saying, well, my servo mechanism doesn't work. I set it at 65. Why is it going back to 100? Have you been 100 for the last few months, last year, last 2 years? How many years? What's the weight that you're always a constant at? It just means that servo mechanism, your internal setting, your internal weight setting is 100 kilos. Does it mean that the servo mechanism is not working? No, it means that it's working. It just means that that setting is a setting that your body has decided to be at. So no matter how much diet you go on, it will keep on going back to 100. So does it mean that you go on another diet, you try another diet, then if you've been trying different diets and it doesn't work and it's still going back to 100, you do like a yo-yo, then you need to address the story behind it. So the story is, what is the story behind the 100K? What is the story behind putting on the weight? So I want to give you an example. I mean, it really depends on the person's background, right? But to give you an example, so you can actually can do some of your internal research back into your own story as in why you're not hitting the goals that you want. So let's say, for instance, this particular person that has been struggling with weight all their lives, their story is that when you're younger, they were abused. And that was when they were normal in weight and they were abused. And they started to gain weight. And then the weight dropped again. And then again, they attracted unwanted attention. And again, the incident happened. And so they gained weight again. And then they haven't been able to lose the weight since then. So this is just an example, so to show you the kind of pattern that could happen. And so what happens is that the mind goes, well, if I'm slim, then I attract unwanted attention. And so I'm in danger. I get attacked. And so the rule goes that let's put on weight so that we are safe. We don't get attention, we don't get attacked, and we are safe. And so that pattern is weight gain means safety. It's kind of like a padding. It's like, makes me feel strong, makes me feel protected. And so weight gain and extra body fat means safety. So in that case, does a diet work? Because if they go on a diet, it will trigger that pattern. Uh-oh, we're losing weight, we're in danger. Let's put back on weight again. She's going to be in danger. So that pattern is going to be triggered. So what you need to do in this case is address and rewire the neurons so that it's weight loss means safety. Normal, healthy weight means safety. And so the solution is not in going on another diet first, but solution is rewiring that neuroassociation with healthy weight means health with safety, and stacking and working and stacking that evidence in that case, and working on self-care, self-love, working on really associating that with safety. Then, on top of that, to start doing the diet. So that is the kind of work that Dr. Malt talks about. And we all have bundles of habits. I mean, we are just all made up of patterns and habits. Somewhere along the line, there's this formula that we've made up that goes, oh, this and this means this. And so for people in certain relationships may mean unhappiness. And so they need to rewire it to mean happiness and fulfillment. Or some people associate being in business with struggle, working long hours and not having time with their kids. So the more that they push and the more that they are in business and trying to strive, and the effort that they put in, the more that they become really unfulfilled. People have, money beliefs, which are like, oh, but if I make that money, then it's kind of like, I become this mean person who is like, miserable, who doesn't get along with other people, who doesn't, see their family. And so what happens, you can see people making a lot of money and then they'll drop it, right? And something happens and sabotage and they lose it all. And then they go back and they earn it again and they lose it all. And they can't seem to maintain that wealth that they built for themselves. And so that is the kind of thing that you need to do. It's like, there's so many people who come and do programs, they absorb so much information, and yet they think it's about getting more programs. It's like, filling your mind up with more information, going and watching more YouTubes and watching more, listening to more podcasts and reading more books and things like that. But at the end of the day, until you really do the honest work and look within yourself to identify the identity that's been created. I mean, what are all these identities and bundles and all these stories that are put together that represent you? Like the identity that you have around yourself and who you are, and the identity that you think others have of you, like who you think others think you are, and also who you want to be. You need to all integrate that, deconstruct it, and integrate it all together so that the stories make sense. And the truth is, there is a lot of conflicting stories within us. And this took me a lot of time to really understand because, there's so much overwhelming information. But the minute you start to look within and deconstruct and really ask, okay, there's evidence that whatever I do put my mind to works, but at the same time, is it the goal? Is it because I'm not clear on the goal? Or is it there's a story there that's not allowing me to reset that internal setting so that I can reset that and allow me to actually move that to a new level? So as I said with that weight, if the diet is not working and you're finding yourself in this consistent weight, then that is the setting. What is the story behind that? You've got to shift that story. What is associated with the weight gain, with putting on extra weight? Is it safety? Then you've got to address that. With wealth and relationships, what is your association with it? And you've got to start stacking up more evidence in doing that work to really look within and checking up on your past experiences. So our mind is it's a great thing that you have this, servo mechanism that's working for you. The servo mechanism is constantly, looking for, stories and associations, and it makes up its own mind, right? And it just has this formula. And so you have got to go back and look at it and say, well, what is it the setting? What is my financial thermostat set at? What have I been earning? If money is something that you want to look at, then what I have been earning in the past, consistently for the last couple of years, that's your thermostat. And what do you associate with earning more money with? You need to shift that story. So it's about really living creatively, living by design rather than default. And there's stories of people where they're young, somebody there's a story of a girl who's playing piano, and then she overhears her parents saying, oh, she plays clumsily. And so her mind makes up that, oh, okay, I am clumsy then. And so she starts playing piano clumsily to prove that her parents are right. And he doesn't just stop at piano. It continues on with every time she uses her hands. She's clumsy. She's clumsy eating. She drops things. She's clumsy, sewing. She's clumsy, doing all sorts of things with her hands. And that happens, and then that you carry that story. Oh, because they said I'm clumsy, and so I'm going to be clumsy, and so I'm clumsy in everything. And that is when you need to let go. A lot of us need to let go of the stories, need to let go of being responsible for others' paint of us, and letting go of that pattern and doing a little deep dive inner work to dig into your life. It's not about going and getting more programs and watching more stuff and thinking that by changing other people that you can change your world. So what can you do in the case? How do you live creatively in this case? And I really, you really have to go and start stacking up evidence, right? Stacking evidence in your favor, going back in your past, not reliving the past, but going back and really looking at and finding evidence that is going to help you to prove a lot of these stories wrong, So in the case of the person who's clumsy, they have to go back and look at, instances where they have not been clumsy, where they failed as a kid, and evidence as an adult where they have actually been very good and proficient in using their hands. And sometimes the mind forgets. The mind doesn't want to keep score of the things which are in contrast to the story that you want to prove. And you've got these filters on. So you've got to lift that filter. So the transformation that you have really depends on the amount of truth that you can take, right? And you've got to really, lift the veil up. How much truth can you take about who you are? So it's very, very interesting in doing this work and looking at stacking evidence up for yourself. So, Dr. Moll suggests that person who's clumsy with their fingers to let go of that story. At the same time, to, buy little things where they involved using their fingers. So they can work on it each day for about, 20, half an hour, just to, and visualize their fingers long and slim and elegant, and doing small tasks, tying knots, to give them that sense of certainty that, oh, I am very good with my fingers. So if you want to earn more money, and say, for instance, you're in the sales and you want to actually get out of a sales slump, then it's surrounding yourself with people who are making the income that you want. Go and pick their brains, talk to them, put your ego aside, and really starting to debunk a lot of that. Because, there's people who, Tony Robbins, he offers, he has this program where you associate with billionaires, with multi-millionaires. And that's the thing. A lot of us are not really living consciously and asking, are we surrounding ourselves with the type of abundance or the results that we want in our life? Are we really asking ourselves, what do we want, and designing it consciously and giving ourselves that environment that is going to give us more of that evidence? So it's stacking and stacking and creating layers and more layers of evidence for ourselves that we can do something, and everywhere we see, it's that evidence, right? If you surround yourself with people who are eating healthily, you're surrounding yourself with people who have healthy relationships, you're surrounding people who are, always have a great attitude, and they're building a legacy, or it's whatever it is that your goal is, you've got to start surrounding yourself and start to consciously design that, and also design it within your mind as well, and so that you don't constantly remind yourself of the negatives or the failures that you have. I mean, we beat ourselves up too often. What they say, it's somebody beats you up and you can continue to go back and pick up a stick and hit yourself again and again. It's that kind of thing. And so it's really consciously living by design. So are you consciously living by design? Do you know what exactly you want? Have you been doing the work and really getting crystal clear on it, and doing the work? Looking at, going back in your patterns. What's the story? What are you associating it? Hi, Sheldon. Are you associating with it? And are you doing the internal adjustments and alignment? A lot of us say that we want to do it, but we're not doing the inner work. We're just constantly filling up our minds up with more information, more knowledge. But it's kind of like, the coffee filter, unless you really push it down from the conscious mind into subconscious and replace that pattern, and really think about what are you doing on a really conscious level and living there consciously, then that pattern will just continue to perpetrate, and that old inner setting would just continue. Yeah. It does take time. And you have to sometimes take really radical actions. Really radical actions, and bet on yourself and put yourself out there. So what I want to do is I want to actually ask you, like, if you are really serious about going back and really having a good look at your patterns, to join me in a 3-month program. And it's going to be like a group program, very tight knit, and where we're going to actually be looking at identifying what your goal is, doing that work, writing really crystal clear on what it is, and getting a custom made prescription of identifying what your pattern is and what you need to start doing to associate your neurons with a new pattern going forward that allows you to shift that setting going forward. Because without shifting that, all it does is that you're going to be constantly hitting the old setting again and again. And I believe that when you do this with a group, when you do it with people, and when you actually have someone to hold you accountable, then you will do the work. Because often when we're left to our own devices, we don't see what our blind spots are, we don't see what's really happening, what are we really consciously being, and we just drift. So if you're interested in this, just DM me. I'll send out the details later. And you need to really get on the front foot and do the work and do the internal self-discovery and start to stack up and deconstruct the identity that you have, that you created for yourself, that others created for yourself, and consciously live by design. So this is really fascinating work, and there's a lot of techniques. It's not only just visualization techniques that Dr. Maltz introduces. There's a lot of different techniques. I mean, I think there's like 80 something different methods that you can use to start to shift that internal setting, and methods that allow you to create this new reality, because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not. And so if you're replaying this mind, it's this story in your head, that is the subconscious story that is constantly perpetrated. But until you start to have this new way of living, consciously living and living in that and creating that, stacking the evidence towards that new reality, can you shift that? So DM me if you're interested, and I'll send you some information over. And it's going to be 3 months intensive program where we together are going to be shifting that and really getting really honest, and we're going to be really letting go. And I want to have fun. We sometimes get so stuck into you have to do things a certain way. And when you actually allow yourself to be creative and doing things just differently, sometimes that's when you can find new angles to look at your life. We get stuck in the rut so much, and we need to start to just shift it, and even like a small 10-degree shift in the angle where we look at our life. Sometimes you don't see where you are. You have to have someone else with fresh eyes to see where you are. Oh, okay. Map out. Oh, okay. If you were actually, somebody did observe you, what would they notice? Who are you when nobody's around? And sometimes you need that. We all need that, to have someone to come in and look at things in a fresh perspective for us. Otherwise, we don't see our blind spots. We're just constantly living in this one track and not really realizing that there is a lot more, opening up the screens to this whole new world out there. So I hope you've actually gained some information and really started to think about whether you are living life by design, or are you living by default and allowing old patterns to just continually perpetrate and bring you back to whatever it is that this setting is. So let me know your comments. And today the exercise is identifying your goal and identifying where you've been, what is the level that you've been hitting all the time in contrast to that goal. So say if you've been wanting to lose weight, but what have you been hitting all the time? Say you've been wanting to increase your income, but what have you been really earning all these time? And in relationships, what is the truth with your relationships as well? And going back to the story, what is a story that can you identify any story, any key moments in your life that you've made a decision that, oh, this and this equals this. And so this is what I associate with. And if you need help with that, just DM me and then we'll get into that group program so you can start doing that work. Otherwise you'll be living in this blind spot and not being able to shift anything going forward. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll talk tomorrow. And tomorrow we'll be talking about self-expression, how you can actually really let go and become the person that you really want to be by self-expression, by full free self-expression. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.